Part 4. He was washing up his few dishes 15 minutes later when the phone rang again. That won't be her, he thought, wiping his hands on a dish towel and then flipping it over his shoulder as he went to the phone. No way it'll be her, it'll probably Lois or Bill. But another part of him knew differently. Hi, Ralph. Hello, Helen. That was me a few years ago. Her voice was husky if she had been drinking or crying, and Ralph didn't think they allowed booze in the hospital. I kind of figured that. I heard your voice and I couldn't. That's okay, I understand. Do you? She gave a long, watery sniff. I think so, yes. The nurse came by and gave me a pain pill. I can use it too. My face really hurts. But I wouldn't let myself take it until I called you again and said what I had to say. Pain sucks, but it's a hell of an incentive. Helen, you don't have to say anything. But he was afraid that she did, and he was afraid of what it might be. Afraid of finding out that she had decided to be angry at him because she couldn't be angry with Ed. Yes, I do. I have to say thank you. Ralph leaned against the side of the door and closed his eyes for a moment. He was relieved but unsure how to reply. He had been ready to say, I'm sorry you feel that way, Helen, in the calmest voice he could manage. That was how sure he'd been that she was going to start off by asking him why he couldn't mind his own business. And, as if she had read his mind and wanted to let him know he wasn't entirely off the hook, Helen said, I spent most of the ride here and the check-in in the first hour or so in the room, terribly angry at you. I called Candy Shoemaker, my friend over on Kansas Street, and she came and got Nat. She's keeping her for the night. She wanted to know what had happened, but I wouldn't tell her. I just wanted to lie here and be mad at you for calling 911 even though I told you not to. Helen, let me finish so I can take my pill and go to sleep, okay? Okay. Just after Candy left with the baby, Nat didn't cry, thank God. I don't know if I could have handled that. A woman came in. At first I thought she must have gotten the wrong room because I didn't know her from me, but when I got it through my head that she was here to see me, I told her I didn't want any visitors. She didn't pay any attention. She closed the door and lifted her scrub so I could see her left thigh. There was a deep scar running down it almost all the way from her hip to her knee. She said her name was Gretchen Tilbury, that she was a family abuse counselor at woman care, and that her husband had cut her leg open with a kitchen knife in 1978. She said if the man in the downstairs apartment hadn't got a tourniquet on it, she would have bled to death. I said I was very sorry to hear that, but I didn't want to talk about my own situation until I'd had a chance to think it over. Helen paused and said, but that was a lie, you know. I've gotten plenty of time to think it over because Ed first sent me 2 years ago, just before I got pregnant with Nat. I just kept pushing away. This lady, I can see how a person would do that, Ralph said. This lady, well, they must give people like her lessons on how to get through people's defenses. Ralph smiled. I believe that's about half their training. She said I couldn't put it off, that I had a bad situation on my hands and I had to start dealing with it right away. I said that whatever I did, I didn't have to consult her before I did it or listen to her line of bullshit just because her husband had cut her once. I almost said he probably did because she wouldn't shut up and go away and give him some peace. Can you believe that? But I was really pissed, Ralph, hurting, confused, ashamed, but mostly just pissed off. I think that's probably a pretty normal reaction. She asked me how I feel about myself, not about Ed, but about myself, if I went back into the relationship and Ed beat me up again. Then she'd ask how I'd feel if I went back in and Ed did it to Nat. That made me furious. It still makes me furious. Ed has never laid so much as a finger on her, and I said so. She nodded and said, that doesn't mean he won't, Helen. I know you don't want to think about that, but you have to. Still, suppose you're right. Suppose he never so much as slaps her on the wrist. Do you want her to grow up watching him hit you? Do you want her to grow up seeing the things she saw today? And that stopped me cold. I remember how Ed looked when he came back in, how I knew as soon as I saw how white his face was, the way his head was moving like a rooster. Ralph murmured, what? Nothing, go on. I don't know what set him off. I never do anymore, but I knew he was going to start in on me. There's nothing you can do to say or stop it once it gets to a certain point. I ran for the bedroom, but he grabbed me by the hair. He pulled out a great big bunch of it. I screamed, and Natalie was sitting in her high chair, sitting there watching us. And when I screamed, she screamed. Helen broke down, then crying hard. Ralph waited with his forehead leaning against the side of the door between the kitchen and the living room. He used the end of the dish towel he'd slung over his shoulder to wipe away his tears almost without thinking about it. Anyway, Helen said when she was capable of speaking again, I ended up talking to this woman for an hour. It's called victim counseling. She does it for a living. Can you believe it? Yes. Ralph said, I can. It's a good thing, Helen. I'm going to see her again tomorrow at Woman Care. It's ironic, you know, that I should be going there. I mean, if I hadn't signed the petition, If it hadn't been a petition, it must have been something else. She sighed. Yes, I guess that might be true. It is true. Anyway, Gretchen says I can't solve Ed's problems, but I can start solving some of my own. Helen started to cry again and then took a deep breath. I'm sorry. I've cried so much today I never want to cry again. I told her I loved him. I felt ashamed to say it, and I'm not even sure it's true, but it feels true. I said I wanted to give him another chance. She said that meant I was committing Natalie to giving him another chance, too. And that made me think of how she looked sitting there in the kitchen with pureed spinach all over her face, screaming her head off while it hit me. God, I hate the way people like her drive you into a corner and won't let you out. She's trying to help, that's all. I hate that, too. I'm very confused, Ralph. Probably you didn't know that, but I am. A wan chuckle drifted down the telephone line. That's okay, Helen. It's natural for you to be confused. Just before she left, you told me about High Ridge. Right now, that sounds like just the place for me. What is a kind of halfway home? She kept explaining that it was a house, not a shelter for battered women, which is what I guess I now officially am. This time the one chuckle sounded perilously close to a sob. I can have Nat with me if I go, and that's a major part of the attraction. Where is this place? In the country out toward Newport, I think. Yeah, I guess he knew that. Of course he did. Ham Davenport had told him during his woman care spiel. They're involved in family counseling, spouse and child abuse. They run a shelter for abused women over by the Newport town line. All at once, woman care seemed to be everywhere in his life. Ed would undoubtedly have some sinister implications in this. That Gretchen Tilbury is one hard sugarman, Helen was saying. Just before she left, she told me it was all right for me to love Ed. It has to be all right, she said, because love doesn't come out of a faucet you can turn on and off whenever you want to. But that I had to remember my love couldn't fix him, that not even Ed's love for Natalie could fix him, and that no amount of love changed my responsibility to take care of my child. I've been lying in bed thinking about that. I think I liked lying in bed and being mad better. It was certainly easier. Yes, I can see how it might be, Helen. Why don't you just take your pill and let it all go for a while? I will, but first I wanted to say things. You know you don't have to do that. I don't think I know any such thing, she said, and Ralph was glad to hear the flash of emotion in her voice. It meant the essential Helen Deepna was still there. I haven't quit being mad at you, Ralph, but I'm glad you didn't listen when I told you not to call the police. It's just that I was afraid, you know. Afraid. Helen, his voice was thick, close to cracking. He cleared his throat and tried again. I just didn't want to see you hurt any more than you already were. When I saw you coming across the parking lot with blood all over your face, I was so afraid. Don't talk about that part, please. I'll cry if you do, and I can't stand to cry anymore. Okay. He had 1,000 questions about it, but this was clearly not the time to ask them. Can I come see you tomorrow? There was a short hesitation, and Helen said, I don't think so, not for a little while. I have a lot of thinking to do, a lot of things to sort out, and it's going to be hard. I'll be in touch, Ralph. Okay, of course, that's fine. What are you going to do about the house? Candy's husband is going to go over and lock it up. I gave him the keys. Gretchen Tilbury said that Ed isn't supposed to go back for anything, not even his checkbook or a change of underwear. If there's stuff he needs, he gives a list and his house key to a policeman, and the policeman goes to get it. I suppose we'll go to Fresh Harbor. There's plenty of housing there for lab employees. Those little colleges are actually really cute. The brief flash of fire in her voice was long gone. Helen now sounded depressed, forlorn, and very, very tired. Helen, I'm delighted that you called and relieved. I won't kid you about that, and I'll get some sleep. What about you, Ralph? She asked unexpectedly. Are you getting any sleep these days? Some, but maybe not as much as I need. Probably not as much as I need. Well, take care of yourself. You were very brave today, like a knight in a story by King Arthur. But I think even Sir Lancelot had to fall out every now and then. He was touched by this and almost amused. A momentary picture, very vivid, arose in his mind. Ralph Roberts' dressing room mounted on a snow-white steed, while Bill, his faithful squire, rode behind him on his pony, dressed in leather jerkin and a snappy Panama hat. Thank you, dear, he said. I think that's the sweetest thing anyone said to me since Lyndon Johnson was president. Have the best night you can. Okay, you too. She hung up. Ralph stood looking at the telephone thoughtfully for a moment or two, then put it back in its cradle. Perhaps he would have a good night. After everything that had happened today, he certainly deserved one. For the time being, he thought he might go downstairs, sit on the porch, let the sun go down, and let later take care of itself.